Welcome in everybody to another episode of my Unreal Engine 5 beginner to pro tutorial series. And in this one, we're hopefully going to finish off this interaction UI system. And I apologize in advance if the video is a little long, but I want to finish this up. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So back in C++, we're going to update the interaction widget that we have here. And as you can see, it derives from our text widget. So it already has that main text in the subtext and all that, basically all that information in there. And then note that we have the interface for input icon in the header. And we also have the user widget CCS input icon forward declared. So make sure you don't miss that. And then we'll scroll down and we have our 3 default Unreal functions. And we're just going to be calling the parent version and setting up our initialization stuff. So nothing too interesting there as well. We'll then scroll down a little bit and we have our pass delegates function for the input icon CCS delegate. And note we don't need the subtext in main text because we derive from text, well, the text widget. So we already have those delegates defined in the parent class. And then we also have the callback for update main text here. In that we do want to redefine and basically override it because it is going to behave a little bit differently than it would in the base class of the text widget. And yeah, same thing for the subtext one. It's going to be a little bit different, so we need to override it. And then we have our callback for the input icon CCS. And note that we're not putting ufunction in front of the overrides, only the original callbacks. So very important there. And then we have our user widget CCS input icon binding there. And the syntax is just the same as what we went over last time, so nothing too interesting. And then we'll swap over to the .cpp and paste in all this code. And note we have those 2 includes at the top for text block and for user widget CCS input icon. And as you can see, we just have calling our parents version in the 3 default functions. We'll then scroll down a little bit and we have our pass on update input icon CCS delegate. So that'll work the same way. And basically we are going to take in that delegate and bind to it. And we're also going to pass the delegate to our input icon. So we want to make sure both widgets are responding correctly to this delegate being fired off. And then we get into the updating the main text. And as you can see, this one's a little bit different than the implementation we had in the text widget, because we also need to make sure that the input icon is hidden as well. So we want to protect against the case where we have an input icon showing but no text, which can happen, and we don't want to just automatically hide everything if that happens. So as you can see, same kind of thing, and assuming we get past that first check where we hide visibility on everything and return out, we want to set the main text to be the new text, set the visibility to visible, and set the visibility of the whole widget to visible as well. And then we have the subtext update, and that's kind of the same thing, except for now we're involved with the subtext. So we're checking if that's empty, we're setting the subtext, we're setting the visibility of the subtext, and then the visibility of the whole widget, and then returning out. So that check is the same as the main text one, except for now it's the subtext. We'll then scroll down a little bit to our update input icon, and this one works primarily the same way. So we're checking to see if it's a valid key, and then also checking the main text visibility and the subtext visibility. And if all those conditions meet, then we're just going to hide the widget. So kind of the same thing as what we were doing on the subtext and main text, but a little bit different. And we then have the last couple of lines, which are just basically going to set the visibility to visible if we made it past that check successfully. We're then quickly going to fill out the HSS version of this, and basically it's exactly the same, and we just have this here for future expansion. So as you can see, I'm just going to quickly swap out creators for hide, seek, survive. And that's all we're really going to do here. We're not going to be defining any functions. This is just here in case we decide we need to change anything in the future. And by the way, if you want to get rid of that red underline, just swap it out for HSS game instead of CRE game, and you'll be fine. And here we're just updating the spacing. And yeah, right there, swap it out to HSS game. It's going to take me a while to figure it out, but I'll skip ahead. And there we go, class HSS game underscore API, and the red squiggle is gone. And now we're going to get into defining these interfaces. And the first one we're going to do is the input icon interface. And as you can see at the top there, we're declaring a dynamic multitask delegate. And that's the custom delegate that we've been using. And we have one parameter in it. And it will be an F name called new key name. So that's pretty straightforward. And note that the interface kind of boilerplate code here is the same as the other interface we defined a few episodes ago. So nothing too interesting going on here other than the delegate declaration. And then once we get down here, you'll see all we have is the getter for the input icon delegate, and then the actual reference to the input icon delegate. And this is why we're not going to need to override this function in the other components that basically employ this delegate. Well, we will need to override it, but all we'll do in the override, as you saw when we were working on the receiver component, is just call the parent version and call it a day. We then swap over to the CPP, and as you can see, all we're doing is just defining that function, and all it is doing is just returning the delegate reference. And now we're going to do the exact same thing for the text interface. So as you can see, the exact same declaration there. We even have one parameter here as well. But this time the parameter is going to be ftext, and we're going to call it inText. But other than that, everything should look exactly the same as the last interface that we filled out. And then when we scroll down into the actual interface, as you can see, we just have the getters for the delegates, and then the actual references to the delegates themselves. So very straightforward again, very similar to the last one we did. Just basically getting and setting those references in the interface so we don't have to worry about doing it in the classes that declare these interfaces. We then walk over to the CPP, and as you can see, all we're doing is returning those delegate references when we define the getters. And now we're all set with the C++. So I know this has been a ton, and thank you for sticking with me throughout this long process of implementing this feature. But now we can build the project and get back into the actual editor, which is very exciting. And if you appreciate these videos and all the hard work I put into them, definitely leave a like and a comment on the video. It really helps me out in the YouTube algorithm if you do so, and I really appreciate it if you take the time to do it. So thank you. But anyways, we're finally back into the engine, and we're going to go to content, and we're going to go to UI, and we're going to make a folder called widgets and go in, and then we're going to make a blueprint class, and we're going to search for input icon CCS, and then there we go. So WBP input icon CCS, and we'll open up the widget editor for the first time. So very exciting stuff. And first thing we're going to do is look up an overlay, and we're going to put that on there to make it root of this widget. And as you can see, when we compile, it isn't happy because we don't have our required widget bindings defined yet. But no big deal, we can define those very easily. So we just drop an image on the overlay, and we want to make sure we set it to take up the entire volume of the overlay, just like that. And now we can duplicate it a few times. But yeah, make sure you have the fill horizontally and vertically options. And now we're just going to duplicate this 4 times. So we have all the images we need. And then we just have to change the names. So note that the names have to be exactly the same, or else they're not going to work. And this is case sensitive as well, so just make sure you have that right, and you'll be able to tell if you don't have it right if it doesn't compile. So I'll skip ahead until I've typed all these in, and now that they're all in, we should be able to compile, and yeah, see it's happy. So that's good. And now if we click on the top level widget, we can add in these elements that we declared inside of C++. So we'll make our first key gamepad face button left, and that's just what the engine outputs. So make sure you have that copied down exactly as I have it. And then you want the index 1 to just be the F key capitalized. So again, make sure that is exact or else yours will not work. And now we're going to add in the icons. So index 0, we're looking at the gamepad, so we'll drop that in. And then for 1, we drop in the keyboard. So looking good there. And then now we're trying to find the F key. There we go, put that in there. And then we're going to try to find our face button left. And we'll drop that in. And we can just leave the other ones as null. And our backend system will figure that out and there won't be any issues. And for now, we're just going to drop in some placeholders so we can see what it will look like. And remember, that will all be cleared out properly. And see here, I'm just updating the image size to the resolution of our actual images. So just make sure you do that or else your UI is not going to look right. Okay, so now we're finding a keyboard key to drop in here. So this is the main one, so we'll drop this in. And we did that incorrectly, but we'll fix it in a second. So as you can see, we're going to change it to literally anything but the K key. And we'll do the same thing for the other ones. But you can click and shift click to edit the same values on all these images. So instead of editing each one's size one by one, we're going to update all of them to 1050 by 750. And now we're going to swap out the images, as I said we were going to do. So we put the keyboard there, and now we just want to put any key here that isn't the F key, so we'll know that it's working and updating properly. But we also want to see what the layout will look like here in the preview window. Okay, so that one's all set, and then pick any other key, right enter, sure. And as we can see, we're looking pretty good. And don't worry that it looks a little stretched out here. In game, it will display at the proper resolution to match our image, and we will be all set. I just want to avoid it scaling in game because it looks really bad if it scales in game. The resolution goes way down and it's just a disaster, to be honest. And alright, that's all we have to do in here. Now we can close out and we can start working on our interaction widget. So go back to widgets and we are going to right click, blueprint, and we're going to look up the interaction widget and make sure to pick the HSS version if for any reason we decide we need to add anything in here. So WBP interaction HSS. And then the first thing we're going to do is drop in an overlay. Okay, looking good. And now we're going to put in a vertical box. So drop that in. And now we're going to put in some text. And remember, we need a main text and a subtext. And we have our input icon as well, which is also bound. So we need that. And this top one, we're basically just going to hide this because this is going to be the main text. And we don't want that showing. If you remember, we just need the one text value to show. So see, we X that out, and now it's hidden. And now we're going to put our subtext in. So we'll add that. We'll center it. Yeah, we don't want to align in the center vertically. We want the top from a vertical standpoint. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to edit this to just say proof to show that this is working. Well, proof to show this works, because if it didn't work, then that text would just stay the same. And we want to update that font to size 80 in regular. And 80 might be a little bit too big. Let's see here. Compile, save. And let's rename everything so that this isn't going to be cranky anymore. So same thing as last time, just retitle the widgets. So this one is main text. That's the one that's going to be hidden. And even though it is going to be hidden, we still have to define it. Just a little UMG quirk there, but no big deal. We retitle them, compile, save, and we are all set. So yeah, we're done with that. Now we need to make a few miscellaneous changes inside of C++. So first, we're going to define the inputs for interaction. So we can just duplicate the crouch one and call it interact. And it's literally going to be exactly the same as crouch. And we'll add it to our mapping context as well. So interact, and now we set the buttons just like we've done previously. And we want F for mouse and key. And then we go into gamepad, face button left. Where is it? There it is. Face button left. And yeah, that's all we have to do for adding the input. Very easy. And make sure we save and check that out. And we'll open up the action as well so you can see, but it's literally exactly the same as the crouch one. And now we're going to go to core and our character, and we're going to add a few things in here. Alright, so we are looking for the seeker component, no, the receiver component. And we have to add in the widget in here. So we're looking for that. And there it is. That's what we were looking for, the interaction widget comp. And we're going to put in the interaction HSS. Okay, looking good. Compile, save. And this we're not actually going to show yet. We just have it in there so we don't get a compile error when it tries to make that widget. And then now we need to create our material library, which we haven't done yet. But we're going to need to make a custom widget material that will render over everything. And see, we make a folder called material library, and we click into that, and then make a subfolder called UI. And then we're going to go down here to engine, and you might have to press view and then show engine content to see this. But we're going to find the 3D pass-through material. So widget 3D pass-through, and duplicate it, call it widget 3D pass-through CCS, and drag it into our material library. Okay, so looking good. Now we need to open that up, and there's one very important property we need to change in here. Where is it? And this property is called the translucency pass. And we need to make sure that is set until after motion blur. And what this does is it gets rid of this weird effect that will blur our widget if we don't have this on. Because we're going to be moving and rotating the widget dynamically, it's kind of a weird situation, and we need that weird material to make sure it's handled properly. And then we're going to go into the interactable actor and edit the key. And we want to update this to simply be interact. So yeah, looking good. And then we need to add our need key press. We need to make it true because we want this interact to need confirmation from a key press and that key press UI. Okay, so now we click on the widget component and we want to put in our WBP interaction. We want to check draw at desired size to make sure that it's actually drawn correctly. You can manually set the size there, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would just make the widget the size it's supposed to be and not edit it in here. Again, for the reason of we don't want to be checking out many files to do one thing. And see, we put in the material we made. And for now, we're going to turn on visibility so we can see what this is going to look like and move it around if we need to. Okay, so we're going to raise it a little bit so it's above the box. And then now that it's visible, we can move it around a little bit. And we'll compile, save, make sure it's checked out. And now we're going to quickly make sure that collision is actually turned off. So as you can see, we have collision enabled, no collision, because we set that in C++. So we're looking good there. And as you can see it, so we don't want that. That's why we're turning off visibility by default. So it doesn't show up in the map, because it looks kind of annoying. So we're going to go try to find it again, and we're turning it off by default, so it'll be back to its default. And now we're in the character again. There's something I forgot to do. I forgot to put in the interact CCS action. So compile, save. Now we're looking good. And in the interactable actor, I forgot to put in the interaction text. So we want to set that to press to interact, or whatever fun message you want to put in your interaction UI. And now that we're done with that, we can quickly test in standalone. And as you can see, our UI is up and it's looking good, and see how it clears properly when we look away. And then when we press the F key, we're getting the interaction. So see how that's printing out? So that's all looking pretty good. So yeah, looking great in standalone. So now we're going to go test in the client configuration. So to do that, again, you go to number of players 2, client, and then you press play. And what I'm trying to show here is, as you can see, the small window, we have the interaction UI is up, and we can't see it in the other window because obviously we don't want that to be replicated. But when I do press the F key, that interaction is being replicated. So now that we have proven this works, we can speed run our packaging. So we package, and we'll skip ahead until this is done. Packaging complete, good to see. And now we'll pop open that build, and as we can see, our UI is still popping up. So see, it's starting, it's going away as we'd like. Looking good, and then we press the F key and see how that is making the event trigger. So I think I'm good to call this done. And then we'll quickly hop over to our board and put this into review. Then we'll go to Perforce, go to Submit. And I know there's a lot of stuff in this change list because we've been working on this for 7 episodes? So I'm going to quickly scroll through it. So you guys just make sure your change list looks pretty similar to mine and you haven't missed anything. So again, just make sure this is all in your change list and you should be all set. So now we can send that on its way, looking good. That's fine, the little error, don't worry about it, just press OK. Change list 81 is in. And as we move over to our board, move this into done and add our little comment. Thank you so much as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.